And welcome to the Pew.
The Pew.
Where
we're gonna mix things up today by starting with bitches wanna know.
Crazy, just going crazy.
We're out of control.
Out of control at the Pew. You'll be thinking we're on drugs or something.
Lola Cola asked us about Boy George biography. Now we're not sure which biography she's referring to because he has more than one. And I think so. So in the question, Lola asks, in Boy George's biography, he mentions Michael, and so I remember reading Take It Like a Man, and I don't recall Boy George mentioning Michael. So maybe it's a different book.
I can't imagine that he would have said anything nice about me. Because the only times he's ever, I've seen it, we've been in the same clubs and at the same parties and at the same time, but he never introduced himself to me, and I never introduced myself to him because he seemed very bitchy and very snobby. Like all of those Brit people were very bitchy and snobby, except for Lee Bowery.
They were.
Who were paying to be there. So we were
it was
him not to be.
I never went up to Boy George in the clubs, like, because I remember the first time I saw him was at Area in probably like 1984, 1985, and I kind of like got close to him on the dance floor while we were dancing, just so that his coat could brush against me. But he seemed really bitchy, and one of the things that I noticed about a lot of these British music artists is that they were mean, you know, because I remember going up to Pete Burns from Dead or Alive, and he was so nasty and mean to me when I tried talking to him.
You know, and what he wrote in his biography about me was so not true.
What did he write?
He wrote that he was performing at the Limelight, and he came for his sound check. Now, this would have been, 1992 or 93. And that he came, and he didn't show up. In real life, he actually didn't show up for the show. But what he wrote in his book was that he did show up, and that I answered the door for his sound check at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that I answered the door covered in polka dots and with blood dripping from my head, and that
That's not true.
No, and that I took him to the dance floor where I had all of these hanging body parts all over the stage, and he said he wouldn't perform with these hanging body parts, and that I refused to take them down, and I made some kind of joke about, costing an arm and a leg or something like that, and he said that he wasn't going to perform in such a club, and he stormed out.
That's a great story, Pete.
Yeah, it's a great story, but it never happened.
No, it didn't, because I specifically remember going to the sound check to watch him do whatever he was going to do, because there was some fanboy that wanted to meet Pete Burns who was there, so I took him there, and that's when he was really mean to us. So there were no body parts. I mean, we weren't dressed up. I mean, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
They're lucky we were there at all.
Right.
Wearing our pajamas or something.
Probably. But Boy George, like, my favorite time of Boy George was in the 80s when he was a junkie cocaine head. So, of course, the cocaine makes you so bitchy that I knew he was a coke fiend, so I didn't go near him.
Well,
I think he'd be mean.
I read an interview that he did in Interview Magazine where he said that Michael Alig is a good example of somebody copying someone, trying to copy somebody else, but getting it so wrong. I mean,
think about that during this commercial break.
Yeah.
And now a word from our sponsor. Welcome back to the Pew.
Welcome back to the Pew.
Welcome back to the Pew.
So, since we were talking about Boy George and how my favorite Boy George period was that mid to late 80s period when he was like a coke fiend and junkie, because I thought it was
still a coke fiend, isn't he?
Maybe, but it got us talking about foundation.
Doing coke and getting prostitutes, chain them to bed.
Good times.
Here.
It got us thinking about foundation highs, which was this concept.
Prostitutes to bed and cocaine.
Ready to talk about foundation highs?
Yes, foundation highs.
You're an expert on
Just saying.
You're an expert.
I'm saying.
Talk about what you know.
I know that I don't chain prostitutes to beds and give them cocaine.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're not sure what Boy George's foundation high was, but we all had our foundation high.
But it is.
Now, why don't you define a foundation high?
A foundation high is the drugs that you take at home in order to get ready to go out and take drugs.
Right. It's like makeup, where you're like putting on your foundation so that you'll have a nice flesh tone face, which you then cover with all this paint, like all this crazy paint and eyelashes and other accessories. So What was your foundation high at
Well,
home?
I was very low maintenance at the time, so my foundation high would have been heroin, obviously, and probably maybe a Hypnol, but it was
Just a little touch of heroin,
so
so that I can go out to energize me to go out.
I could do drugs. Lahoma had a foundation high.
Right, I
Lahoma and RuPaul both had a foundation high.
Right. In fact, the first time I ever heard that concept of foundation high was from Lahoma, because we were at Disco 2000 talking about it, and I remember her foundation high, or what she told me was a home cocktail, which is very different from a club cocktail.
Yes, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite of a club cocktail. So, like, the home cocktail is like this much liquor and that much mixer. And I think she also said it was a joint. So she would do that and then come to the club to do the cocaine and everything else. And my foundation high was I liked having a home cocktail and a big fat line of crystal meth.
Oh,
to get me going and perk me up for the party.
Yeah. Yes.
So that I can then do more drugs at the party.
So, yes.
Don't try this at home. It's very bad. We don't recommend it. Unless you live in New York City.
I certainly don't.
Unless you live in New York City where you get taxis.
Not even when you live in New York City do I recommend it.
Well, at this point, I don't recommend it in New York City because... Well, actually,
I may recommend it in 2016.
No,
I don't recommend it now.
You know what? I'm going to take a stand. I recommend it in 2015 in New York City. And the reason I will, at the very least, recommend a home cocktail as a foundation high before leaving the house is because you go to a club and it's $15 for some weak, watered down cocktail. So, I mean, you could buy a whole bottle of liquor for that.
Last night they were $18 a box, I think.
Were they?
Well,
why, you bought one?
No, we didn't. No, but we don't buy drinks.
Well, I buy drinks.
Do you?
Yes, I do, because
where
I buy them, like sometimes at Suzanne's parties.
You do not.
Here's what I think. I've said this before.
Ernie Glam, you do not buy cocktails.
I feel that sometimes I should support the club people by at least buying one drink because, I often get in for free, so it's not like I'm paying to
I'm going to add that. I have a list of things that make you not Ernie Glam anymore. And I'm going to add that to the list.
I will say that
this is Ernie Garcia I'm hearing from.
I will say that club promoters are judged on how much liquor is sold.
In fact, I'm going to write a book from Glam to Garcia and show the digression from here to here to here to here to here to here. Well, how far will you go? How low will you go?
Oh, I can go pretty low.
Well,
stay tuned. See you next time.
Yes, bye.